Hello and welcome to Lore of the Cards, the series that looks to find the lore hidden in your Hearthstone deck. Tonight, we have a story of wonder and magic, fairy tales and romance, and the hard work of the flamboyant stage manager Barnes. What little we know of him and Karazhan's world-famous opera house. The art of the card is by Garrett, Hanna, a Canadian artist who has produced art for the Menagerie Magician, the Dual Druid Forms, Darkshire Councilman, and the Cyclopean Horror, as well as Barnes. Hanna's cartoony art style was put to good use for the MMO Wildstar, his work perfectly capturing the mood and style of that game. He's also produced some pretty cool Street Fighter fan art, vastly different from the output of the official artists. Go give him a look. Anyway, we've had our 5-minute call, the curtain is about to rise, the show must go on. Those who are only familiar with Hearthstone may be surprised by Karazhan's current state in World of Warcraft. The Guardian Medivh's tower no longer plays host to lavish parties. It is abandoned by mortals. Spirits and demons now stalk the empty dining room, the dilapidated ruins, the crumbling library, and Azeroth's only opera is silent. As One Night in Karazhan indicates, it was not always like this. Though there were no cutlery golems and Draenei and blood elves weren't even a thing back then, but then Hearthstone frequently looks at the established lore and goes, fuck that! So we should be used to that by now. Medivh's future was destined to end in ruin, as the corrupted titan Sargeras had taken possession of the Master Magician before he was even out the womb. Sargeras led the Burning Legion, the demonic army that had destroyed countless worlds and sought to destroy Azeroth as well. Medivh's great magical power was passed down to him by his mother, Aegwynn, but in a twisted parallel to Sargeras, these powers remained dormant for much of Medivh's childhood. On the eve of Medivh's 14th birthday, his powers awoke within him, the force of which sending him into a 20-year coma and killing his father, Aran, whose tormented spirit would become bound to Karazhan. Must have ruined the party a bit. Upon waking, Medivh would take up residence in Karazhan and act as Azeroth's guardian, the latest in a long line of mages that dedicated their lives to protecting the world from demonic threats. It is likely around this time that events like One Night in Karazhan would take place. In his youth, Medivh had been adored by the people of Stormwind, the kingdom in which he grew up, and it was likely Medivh was still popular despite his 20-year absence. Perhaps the parties he threw within Karazhan were to make up for lost time, and extravagant theatrical shows, overseen by the exuberant Barnes, were put on to entertain his esteemed guests. Nothing is known of Barnes' life before this, but he was selected to stage manage Medivh's lavish opera house. For those unfamiliar with the stage manager's role, they make sure a show runs smoothly, making sure props and costume changes can be easily accessed, actors are ready for the start of a show, communicating between teams, and sometimes cueing lighting and sound for smaller scale productions. Barnes appeared to take on even more responsibilities, casting the very best actors and singers from around the world to perform, and also personally introducing the shows he organised. Barnes claimed that his theatre was the finest in Azeroth. Not the most difficult task, as to my knowledge there aren't any other theatres in Azeroth. Barnes prided himself on creating some of the most spectacular shows ever seen, but was always looking to improve on what came before. These were never easy to put on for the enthusiastic stage manager, his crews frequently turning up late for rehearsals and performances, more often than not losing themselves in the sprawling labyrinth of Karazhan. Yet he had nerves of steel, always optimistic for the shows created within his theatre, and so he should be. He never disappointed. Maybe that explains the lack of theatres in Azeroth. Everyone just came to Barnes's. With Medivh as his employer, Barnes was able to accomplish technical feats no other show possibly could, getting the Guardian to warp in towers of real stone and construct buildings and costumes in an instant to give an extra sense of authenticity to his productions, though Barnes also used traditional sets as well as this, paintings on wooden backgrounds. As Sargeras began to stir within Medivh, the Guardian's mood darkened, shutting himself and his vast knowledge of the arcane off from the rest of the world. What happened to Barnes during this period of Karazhan's history can only be speculated upon. Perhaps the over-enthusiastic stage manager was killed by Medivh, Sargeras finding him an annoyance. He may have been thrown out of Karazhan when Medivh desired solitude. Without the theatre that gave his life meaning, Barnes may have taken his own life. Whatever happened, Barnes' deceased spirit would return to Karazhan in World of Warcraft's Burning Crusade expansion, Medivh long absent from the tower. Karazhan had been sealed, but was now reopened. Mages of the world were hungry to learn the Guardian's secrets, and heroes seeking adventure looked to clear the tower of the malevolent spirits and demons. One of the spirits they met was Barnes. Once again, the stage manager was looking to put on a spectacular show, only this time to an audience of lost spirits. But Barnes was not able to proceed as planned. Moroes, now an undead shadow of his former self, had forbidden Barnes from putting on his show, still exercising his power as Medivh's steward. Clearly, Moroes' position in life still held some sway over Barnes in death. When heroes met with Barnes, he mistook them for actors, delighted the Actors Guild had sent some new talent his way. Barnes' spirit was clearly not all there mentally, also mentioning his backers were going nuts from him not being allowed to put on his show. What backers the dead have, I'm not really sure. The heroes needed Barnes' show to go on in order to progress further into Karazhan, so they decided to help out the stage manager, killing Moroes. With no steward calling the shots, Barnes was free to do as he pleased. Before Barnes would let the heroes progress through, he insisted they play a part in his show. Despite protesting they were not actors, Barnes won them over, saying they'd be fine and they look like naturals. The opera encounter in Warcraft has many similarities to the Hearthstone encounters in One Night in Karazhan. Perhaps this indicates that these were the shows Barnes was producing before his death, indicating that One Night in Karazhan occurs close to when Sargeras began to establish more control over the Guardian. In WoW, heroes would perform one of 3 shows, mirroring stories in the real world, starting after a brief introduction given by Barnes and ending in violence. These shows are the same as the Hearthstone encounters for the opera wing of the adventure. The Big Bad Wolf encounter mirrors the traditional fairy story of Red Riding Hood, a kindly grandma turning into the Big Bad Wolf after some fantastic acting. "Oh grandmother, what big ears you have. Oh grandmother, what big eyes you have. Oh grandmother, what fat loots you have." The script proving Barnes is totally down with the kids. The encounter in WoW saw raid members being transformed into Red Riding Hood, and during this time the Big Bad Wolf hunted them down, the hero unable to fight back, having to
"Run away, little girl, run away."
This is presented in Hearthstone with the wolf's hero power greatly reducing the effect of minions put on the board. The wolf's ear-splitting howl was also capable of making heroes flee in fear. The Romulo and Julianne encounter draws inspiration from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, dialogue in the encounter being taken directly from the play, proving that WoW is a game for theatrical intellectuals. Julianne would fight the heroes first, attacking them after saying, "What devil art thou that dost torment me thus?" as if the warriors were haunting spectres. When defeated, just like in the play, Julianne consumes a vial of poison. Upon discovering his love killed at the hands of these brutes, Romulo joins the fray. After his defeat, Julianne wakes from her ineffective poison and revives her true love, like the hero power in the Hearthstone encounter. Not one for love stories, the heroes butcher them both. Bastards. The Crone encounter differs the most from the WoW encounter, probably because the Dorothy mechanic added in Hearthstone is pretty cool. Based off L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz, and particularly the 1939 film, Dorothy and Entourage were not friendly to the heroes. In the encounter, they'd all activate one by one, with the possibility of the entire cast attacking the heroes. Dorothy's friends all had weaknesses in keeping with their characters from the Wizard of Oz. Raw was susceptible to fear effects, Strawman could be disoriented by fire spells, and Tinhead would rust over time, at first attacking with brutal strikes, but slowing to a near crawl as the battle progressed. Dorothy had no real weakness, and if you killed her dog Tito before her, there was heck to pay. Rather morbidly, Dorothy only gets to go home in this production after being killed. Upon their defeat was when the Crone spawned, and like in Hearthstone, she was able to summon cyclones. These weren't limited, however, and were nowhere near as deadly as in Hearthstone. They would throw heroes up into the air, causing them to take full damage. No matter what production heroes had to endure, Barnes would emphatically congratulate them on a marvellous performance, letting them finally travel deeper into the bowels of Karazhan. So, there you have it, the lore behind Barnes. a little speculation on the character, and how the Hearthstone encounters match with their WoW counterparts. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, why not congratulate me on a fine performance with a like, a subscription, and sharing this video with other theatre goers. Of course, if you're a no good lousy heckler, you can hit the dislike button. I've done my best to credit the artists in the description below, so give them a look. If you want to keep up to date with Lore of the Cards, follow us on social media, on Twitter @the6gamers and Facebook /6gamersuk. Until next time, I take my bow, and happy Hearthstoning.